There has been another Supreme Court leak, and this time it's about that code of ethics that it was shamed into drafting and adopting. The leak reveals that a few of the justices fought for a code that would not be enforceable. And they're exactly the Supreme Court justices that you are thinking of. First of all, Chief Justice John Roberts never wanted a code in the first place, and he had argued publicly against it over the years. But he finally caved to public pressure when stories of politically compromised and corrupt justices made headlines over and over again, notably Clarence Thomas, and to a lesser but still significant extent, Samuel Alito. Neil Gorsuch, according to the leak, made the argument that imposing a code of ethics on sitting members of the Supreme Court compromises their ability to act independently. This from the New York Times. Justice Gorsuch was especially vocal in opposing any enforcement mechanism beyond voluntary compliance, arguing that additional measures could undermine the court. The justices' strength was their independence, he said, and he vowed to have no part in diminishing it. Thomas and Alito, unsurprisingly, agreed with Gorsuch that independence was one of the utmost important things and could not and should not be remotely compromised or impeded. Besides, according to Alito, the court's critics are politically motivated and impossible to appease anyway, so why bother? Conversely, the court's liberal bench argued that the code should be enforceable, what a concept, by an external body. A slate of federal judges was suggested, but the argument did not get very far, obviously. So now we have the highest court in the land with nothing holding the people sitting on it truly accountable for their conduct and ethics. The understanding is that they're supposed to be the most ethical and the most just people in the country, so they shouldn't even need that kind of governance. They should be able to self-govern, but we know that that is not the case. We'll talk a little bit more about how this conversation even came up in the first place in a bit. But first, Jordan, this all just feels like an amazing waste of time because nothing was functionally or effectively accomplished with any of this. It's a whole lot of nothing. Or am I missing something?
No, I think you're right. It is a whole lot of nothing. They recognize there's a problem. They're trying to save face a little bit, but the solutions are, well, we'll just govern ourselves. Don't worry about it. Well, we are worried about it. We can see what you do already. You're hiding luxury vacations. You are clearly corrupted. The whole court is a mockery. I don't know why we even have it anymore. And they're not going to disband voluntarily. And I don't think we have enough people in Congress. We certainly don't have enough Democrats that support packing it to make these people and their votes irrelevant. But it's just an extra meaningless procedural step if anybody wants to challenge anything, because they're just going to give a rubber stamp to everything Trump or the right ultimately wants to do. And they are easily corruptible. And we're just stuck with it. We're stuck with 6 unelected judges who have lifetime appointments determining that everything, for the most part, Republicans and corporations want to do, they just get to do, and we don't have a say in it. Mm-hmm. This idea that they're independent is laughable. They are purely motivated by partisanship. That is something that in the past was what you could say about the Supreme Court, that they were independent or impartial jurors. They had some ideological bent for sure, but there was more of a swing in how justices behaved, how their opinions were formed, or which side of an issue they took. Now it's just everything that goes before them you can expect for the most part 6-3 split along ideological lines. It is a mockery of what that court has been in the past, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, there really needs to be some kind of dynamism in our government, and checks and balances was supposed to be that mechanism where we were able to kind of adapt as things change. But the reality is that all of our branches of government are now highly partisan. Some are compromised, depending on how far down a rabbit hole you want to go. But it's like with this list of things that they're going to try and do better. It's like the Supreme Court really just tried to pull a be best moment and sell it to the American people. But I did say that we would talk about how we got here. I did mention that Chief Justice Roberts, despite publicly arguing in the past that a code of ethics or conduct wasn't necessary or even recommended for the Supreme Court, he did finally decide to put something in place when headline after headline came out about how corrupt and obviously partisan some of the justices were. And as a result of those revelations, public trust in the Supreme Court has hit an all-time low. A Gallup poll from September of 2023 found that only 41% of Americans approved of the Supreme Court's dealings, which was just 1 point up from its all-time low of 40% in 2021. For comparison, over 60% of Americans approved of the court in 2021, so 23 years ago. And that all-time low, by the way, coincided with the court's refusal to block a Texas abortion law in 2021, which led to the overturning ultimately of Roe v. Wade. Also in 2022, the opinion that the court was too conservative hit an all-time high of 42%. And in the summer of this year, Pew Research found that over half of Americans, or 51%, hold an unfavorable view of the court. The court's favorable rating is 23 points lower than it was just 4 years ago. Jordan, this is a court that is full of appointees. They are never going to be up for reelection. They function as an entirely separate branch of government. As I said, the checks and balances that are supposed to prevent these egregious, overreaches of power and authority that we've been seeing are laughable, especially the fact that they overreached and then they tried to hide it from the American people. It was all leaked to the public. They didn't disclose any of what they were doing. And especially now we have a conservative executive coming in and a conservative Congress coming in next year. So things are not going to get better at this point. Why should the Supreme Court care about whether or not the public likes them, though? They're not elected. They're not going to lose power. A Supreme Court justice has never been removed from the bench. Do you think that this is anything that they're going to lose sleep over? I don't think so.
No, they have nothing. The conservative justices have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Mhm.
And I think it was a difficult conversation that some people had after the election about Sotomayor potentially retiring,
Mhm.
because she is, I think, one of the best ever on the court. She's fantastic. But I talked to Jay Willis, the editor of Balls and Strikes, on my podcast about this a couple weeks ago. The time for that conversation was a couple years ago, right after Biden took office. Democrats don't think long term about the courts, and the right does. And that's why you're seeing all of these favorable decisions all over the country that lead to a stacked Supreme Court, because the Federalist Society has been scheming around completely shifting the judiciary for decades. Democrats had no organized operation on that front for years. They just tried to start one during the Trump years with demand justice, but that's it. That's all we have. And they have been preparing, short lists. When Trump came into office, here's all the judges you can confirm. And these are not people that they are picked based on their merits or qualifications. It's people who know the assignment. They go in there to forward an ideological objective, and that is to totally transform this country. That is what Leonard Leo, who has been deeply part of the Federalist Society and a prominent right-wing operative, has been pushing for years. Every aspect of our society they want to remake in their conservative ideals. And now we have this. We better hope that all three liberal justices can survive for 4 years, that we have elections again in 4 years, and that a Republican does not win. Otherwise, everyone watching this for the rest of our lives is never going to see a liberal majority court ever again.
Mhm. Yeah, that was such a great point that you made too about how the right really understands the value of long-term thinking compared to the left. The left always feels very reactionary. Maybe that's their thing. That's how they motivate their voter base. This whole time they were saying, "Oh, you have to vote because we have to save democracy." And maybe that was a legitimate threat, but the thing is, it wasn't enough to get people to vote for them, right? And they should have learned that the last time they lost to Trump, right? Because we've been here before. This is all so repetitive. And yeah, Project 2025, that did not come out of nowhere. That was in the works for decades. All this stuff with the Christian nationalist party, essentially, they didn't come out of nowhere. This has been a long time coming. We've had national prayer breakfasts, right? And that doesn't, for whatever reason, raise enough eyebrows, I don't think. Um, but anyway, yeah, just to your point, that it is, we're here for a reason. And it's going to be much, much more difficult to get out of this situation now that we are here. I live in Texas and everybody makes fun of us for just voting red all the time. But the thing is, every time we lose an election, they make it more and more difficult for us to vote them out. That is a real thing. I can't account for Ted Cruz. I don't know what the deal is there. I did want to give a shout out real quick to Camp Corona Dad. That is the person that I mentioned during the social break who made the comment, a CEO of a health insurance company doesn't have a bodyguard. Frankly, I'm shocked.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.